Welcome back to our community. Susie Thomas visiting with Faith Barbado, who is with Community Harvest, which is one of the programs of the Akron-Canton Regional Food Bank. Faith, what are we looking at as far as hunger in our community?
Well, you mentioned earlier, it's 24/7 hunger in our community. With the holidays approaching, it's so important to give people a meaningful experience. And so that's where our focus is, obviously, over the next couple of months. But 1 in 5 children and 1 in 7 individuals in this service area are going without enough food to eat each night. They're making decisions between paying medical bills or paying for medications or paying rent versus food. It will continue to be a challenge until we find an answer. And the food bank is heading in the right direction. I feel very strongly that we'll be able to solve this problem, or at least make a big dent in it by 2025, which is our goal.
Oh, that's nice. Is somehow the food bank connected to public schools? Or I always think of how are children supposed to learn and function at their peak if they're hungry? You know, how do we reach those kids right where they are and make sure that they're being fed, and not just fed to fill them up, but fed nutritionally so that they are really growing well?
Well, yeah. So that's for as far as children are concerned. The food bank has so many programs that cater specifically, like Backpack for Kids. There was a new program in Akron, a new pantry that opened that was started in LeBron James's school, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
Even though he left us, he still cares about that community.
Yes.
And left his impact and made his mark, which is awesome. But yeah, that's one of the number one things that teachers say. They can typically identify a child that is food insecure by their ability to stay awake and to pay attention and to thrive in school. It's definitely a problem that we have in our community. And the food bank helps by having those programs and providing the food for those programs that in turn give it to the children so that they have food over the weekends when they're away from school and they don't have access to the free lunch programs.
Well, a lot of people are going to be away from school as there's Christmas break and you get a couple of weeks off. And then what are they eating? And like you said, everybody ought to have a very, very special meal as we celebrate Christmas, or, you know, whatever holiday they happen to be celebrating in their home. Should have, you know, something special to be able to celebrate with. And this is the kinds of things that you guys are working to provide.
Yeah, I love it. Yep. And one of the things that stood out for me, we have partners in Stark County, well, actually throughout our 8-county radius, but there's one in particular, Indian Run Christian Church, donated nearly 30,000 pounds of fresh produce. So that's really important when you talk about children, too. It's not just giving them food, period. It's providing access to healthy, nutritious food. And that's really a staple for us and something very important. Last year, we distributed more than 8.6 million pounds of fresh produce. So that's always on the top.
Say that again. That is such an important factor, because it's not just the peanut butter and the dry goods that you can pull off a pantry. They need fresh fruits and vegetables. Say that again so it doesn't pass us by.
Absolutely. 8.6 million pounds.
Wow.
So that was through our network of local farmers and grocers that support our program, and also the food bank. They're amazing, and this is why this holiday campaign is so expensive. They get the funds that we make during this time, and they will actually turn around and purchase large volumes of produce to ensure that we can get produce to people in need year-round and not just during the summer months.
Right. How do you store it? So that it's fresh. How do you do that?
Have you been out to the Akron-Canton Regional Food
Have
Bank?
not. I need to do that.
Again, so I think I've said the website a bazillion times.
Okay.
AkronCantonFoodBank.org, but you can go on and actually schedule a tour and volunteer opportunities. It is an amazing facility, and it was mind-boggling for me the first time I went through it. But it's something that you have to see to appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've had churches come on who grow food specifically, people who started a garden specifically for this, and I know that's where their produce was ending up. So, yeah, I want to go see how it's kept so that year-round, it's not just, July, you're getting some fresh fruit, that it's all the time, which is so desperately necessary.
I agree. 12 months out of the year. It's amazing. But, yeah, that's where those monetary donations come into play. People ask us what we do with that, but this portion of our program is something that we've been focusing on, and it's very dear and important to us.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how closely you get to work with people who are on the receiving end. What stories you can share with us about what kind of difference this makes in people's lives?
I'm fortunate. As the only paid employee at Community Harvest, I have established great relationships with the 32 hot meal programs and shelters. And I hesitate to say one name because I'm so fond of all of them, but Samaritan's Table, for example, on Thursdays.
Yes.
It's a place like I like to go and have lunch when my schedule will allow. And of course, Refuge of Hope is very near and dear to me. Salvation Army. I have good relationships, and it's important to me through my service, through Junior League, and with my daughter now growing up, that we continue to have these experiences. My caution would be this time of year, knowing the time of the month it is, people will hear this segment and want to go out and volunteer, and it's so important.
Right.
But I remind people that hunger is 24/7, and a lot of people want to volunteer during the holidays. So I always tell people, wait for an anniversary date or maybe a birthday date or a special time, because the summertime, everybody's busy, right? And hunger is not on people's minds. So I know people will get excited and enthusiastic about hearing this message. But try to spread it out and maybe consider the summer months.
I love that idea. Celebrate your anniversary by doing a little volunteering this way, or in the summer months, because like you say, hunger does not take a vacation. It is year round. But what a great idea, because somebody's got a birthday every day of the year, right?
Exactly. We have to spread out the love a little bit instead of just doing it during the holidays. And like I said, it's so important that we bring in the food and the funds to be able to support our 500 partners as they serve people in our community. But really the hardest time for our program, at least, speaking for Community Harvest and the food bank, is in the summertime. When people aren't thinking about hunger, they're on vacation, but that's actually when things get a little tight for us too. Kids are out of school. It's still important for us to get the nutritious food that they need.
Oh, that is such a good reminder. How are you sharing this with the next generation in your own home? What was it about however you were brought up that this became such an important issue for you and drew you to this? And then how do you pass that on to your own family?
Well, I think for me that my family has to participate. They really don't have a choice, but they love it. They do. They do. I tell people that ask that similar question that date night takes on a completely different meaning. So during Hall of Fame events that I mentioned earlier and events throughout the year, my husband and I will get the Community Harvest truck together and deliver it to a local hot meal program. So if he didn't love it, I don't think he'd still be with me in this program after 9 years, right?
It comes with you.
Yeah, and my daughter absolutely loves it. She likes being exposed to the opportunities, and just the awareness that she's blessed is so important to us as a family. But it came to me primarily through my roots in a farming community, seeing my grandma work so hard to make sure that food was not wasted. I feel like we were very blessed. It wasn't an issue of having enough food. It was my grandma's desire to make sure that she could share that with other people.
Yeah. I think you see that, don't you, with the farming, because there's such an abundance. And then the issue is, how do we make sure none of this rots? How do we get this to people and not just leave it right where it is? It's an issue no matter which side of it is you're on.
Right.
Isn't it? Well, all right, let's talk a little bit more about the Community Harvest, Akron-Canton Regional Food Bank, and how can people find out more information? You said you can come for a tour?
Yeah, we're always wanting to share our facility with anybody that would like to learn more. And I mentioned earlier that actually visiting the food bank is the best way to really get a grasp and appreciation of how much food is being delivered each year out of that facility.
What happens? Can you give us like a little bit of an audio tour of visiting?
Yeah, so I wish I knew the square footage, and it's something I need to work on.
That's okay.
So agencies in the area, I mentioned earlier that we have 500 different partners.
That's amazing.
Most of those are like hot meal programs, faith-based churches and whatnot in the area, hot meal programs, shelters. They'll set a time in a 15-minute increment. They have bay doors that open up. They come in. They pre-order what they want. They also have a marketplace there. Everything's for free. I have a couple agencies here in Stark County that will go there just to get the free food from the marketplace. But you load it up and you take it with you, and I think our goal here at the food bank really is to increase the amount of free food. I wish I had more notes, but I want to say last year, almost 72% of the food that was distributed from the food bank was free.
And the food there then goes to the distribution centers. And that's where the individuals can go get the food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the food, different agents, the 500 different agencies and partners I mentioned earlier will pick up the food. They'll take it back, and then they will distribute it to their constituents, neighborhood, community, to make sure that everyone has enough to eat. Be it through a pantry-style program or hot meal. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of shelters that participate in our program as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about the future. We've seen some restaurants and some grocery stores pull out of certain areas, leaving somewhat of a food desert. You're doing more and more with collaborations to make sure that people have food no matter where they live. What can you share with us about what's going on in the future?
Well, I mentioned earlier, the food bank recently acquired the former Fisher Foods property on Cherry Street. Mm-hmm. I think at the end of the day, when it comes to making sure that a community can thrive, and that's part of the mission statement of the Akron-Kent Regional Food Bank and, of course, of Community Harvest, to ensure that we have a thriving community free of hunger. Mm-hmm. I think the most important aspect of making sure that can happen is access to food.
Mm-hmm. I just wrote down the word access right there. So that's exactly it, and that's what you're doing. Faith, we are so grateful for everything that you're doing. We've been speaking with Faith Barbado from Community Harvest and the Akron-Canton Regional Food Bank. Give us that website one more time, please.
It would be the akroncantonfoodbank.org. And anything that we talked about today, from our holiday campaign to volunteering your time to taking a tour, it's a very, very friendly website, and all of the information is pretty easy to access.
Awesome. Faith Barbado, thank you for everything you do in our community.
Thank you for having me. I always love coming here.